I'm Rowan Westlick, an RTF student here at ACC. This is our very first episode of Cineworks Late Night. Our guest today is a stunt double, actor, producer, and a guest speaker at UT. Please welcome Hector Gonzalez. Hector, it's an honor to have you with us, man. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, my absolute pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk to you since you're a stunt double and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just came out. Have you seen it?
I have seen it, yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty great, pretty good.
Yeah, so let's dive right into how you became a stunt double. Like, what inspired you to even get into the film business?
Well, technically speaking, I do stunt doubling and I'm a fight choreographer, which is kind of like a very big thing in the stunt industry because you can probably make a little bit of a living by saying I'm just going to do stunts, but you're always a lot more profitable and marketable if you can do a lot of things. So friends of mine that are in the industry right now, they're SAG, working in LA or Atlanta, New York, whatever, they usually have more than one talent. So driving is a stunt, riding, horseback riding, underwater rigging, a lot of these things are stunts, and the more of them that you can do, the more profitable you are, or the more specialized you are. So I'm I'm a martial artist. I've been doing that for probably about 12 years now, and so my thing is like really complicated stunts. So fight scenes, fight choreography, that's kind of what I get called for. And it kind of just started because I was already in film as a student at UT, and I was a big fan, and I graduated, and then I just kind of took a martial arts class on a whim for fun, and I took to that really, really well. And a couple years down the line, friends at UT that taught or were students, because I was working at the time there, were kind of like, hey, can you come, I know you do martial arts, can you come do this stunt, or can you do this fight scene for me in a movie? And it kind of went from there to where I started doing a lot of fight scenes and choreography. And then I found a group of people around town, kind of before they all left to LA and Atlanta, that were also stunt performers.
Right.
And we all just kind of would hang out like every Sunday and just workshop and talk and have fun. And then we all started hiring each other for movies we got to do and things like that. And that's kind of how I got into this particular thing. But I was already always in film when I was a student. And it just kind of was a really nice, happy accident of the two.
So like when you were in college, that's when you knew you wanted to be a stunt double, like?
Well, probably not. I just knew that I wanted to be in film, and I kind of like anybody else, like yourself or anybody. I love film, and that's what I went to school for. And I had a really great kind of just kind of like a really natural progression into stunts and fighting. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So are there any like stunt doubles you look up to or that have mentored you?
There's a couple. Like first of all of my friends that are in the industry right now. A lot of really great people that are working on like Captain Marvel, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you name it right now. Like
Wow.
what's the last thing? Stranger Things. Like I've got friends working on that, and then I've got a couple of people that I know personally, and then I know only professionally. There's a guy named Scott Atkins who's a really great martial artist who is fantastic, and he is an English dude, and I've talked to him through email a couple of times. And he was really nice and talking to me, so I look up to him. And then there's a stunt coordinator in LA named Ron Balicki, who is actually married to Bruce Lee's goddaughter, and his instructor is one of Bruce Lee's best friends who's still alive and still teaching, and he is actually my martial arts instructor's teacher. So I've gotten to train with him probably for like the last 10 years. Every time he comes in town, we hang out, and he's given me a lot of professional advice and things like that. So I definitely look up to those people. And again, like all my friends that are still like really, really killing it, those who I look up to and who I work with whenever I can.
That's super awesome. So you decided to go to UT, and you said that there was like a lot of opportunities that came from going to UT.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was networking. The absolute biggest thing was networking, because I was fortunate enough to get a job afterwards in the industry. Working with equipment, and that's actually what my day job is. I'm an equipment manager for a lot of companies around town, and everywhere that I've gone, whether it was UT at first, and then another place, and where I currently work right now is a company called Rooster Teeth, I have been able to meet people that I worked with when I was a student, and that I met when I was a student, or that I've worked with anywhere along there, and that job was given to me, or I was able to find it when I was a student at UT. So every door that I've had is kind of opened from that. And every company that I go to, it's somebody saying, hey, you should really probably talk to this person if you want to do, if you're doing a fight or a stunt, Hector knows this, and if not, he knows who to talk to about it. So it was the biggest thing was like the networking that you kind of come out of either whether it's ACC or UT, the friendships and the stuff that you make along the way.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so like when you were in college, you said you had a job already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was working in the equipment room back in the day. It's how I met a lot of friends, in particular, and the biggest thing that kind of like was a happy accident for me was being able to stay in the industry because I got to learn everything. So I know broadcast equipment, I know film equipment, audio, lighting, everything, because I've had to take care of that no matter what job I've had through the industry. Mm-hmm. So and that started with being a student at UT, and I worked during that time period to do that.
Gotcha. So it wasn't really hard for you to find a job after college. You just
it was a little difficult because when we were students working in that job, it was just a part-time thing. Mm-hmm. It was just for students, and it was my boss who ran the equipment room, and nobody else. Everybody else was students. And so probably right after school there was a little bit. I was a lifeguard during the summer, so I was a lifeguard for the city of Austin. Nice. I was what else did I do? I think I was a substitute teacher for a little bit. Okay. So it was a little difficult, and it was really when they turned that job into a full-time thing that I was able to kind of, my boss reached out to me and she said, I really would like you to come interview for this full-time version. And that was it. But it was a little bit of a struggle afterwards. I know everybody after they graduate kind of like has this kind of like, what to do. But I think it's a lot of being stubborn and keeping at it to be able to help you kind of find a job afterwards.
For sure. So like you got to be persistent and stuff.
You have to be very persistent, and this industry is it's very difficult to stick with, but that's part of the journey. I think it's important to kind of do that, because if you can keep going when it's hard to find a job, and if you can find a job, and if you can work hard, then you've already beaten like half of the things that are set against you is just your persistence.
Right. And what was like one of your first gigs again, as like a stunt double, or?
It kind of happened. So after I graduated, I worked at UT. I started doing martial arts, and a couple of years later, it all kind of came together for me. Probably around 2011, 2012, where I had professors saying, "Hey, would you mind stopping in and teaching this to some of my students?" And I had students that worked for me at the time that were like, "Do you know?" kind of this thing, can you do it in a movie for me? As well as like the grad students who were, the grad productions at UT are a lot more kind of allowed to be a little more ambitious with a little more funding and a little more resources. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it like literally hit, like I went from never having been on a set as a martial artist or a stunt person to probably in a semester's time doing 7 movies. Wow. And the very first one I did was kind of a really fun thing. It was a movie by a guy who would go on to make the first 3D student film in the country, like produced as through a college, and it was his previous film, and it was shot in the desert, and there was a lot of visual effects that he added in later because he's a really fantastic visual effects. As a matter of fact, he's teaching visual effects right now at UT. But it was in the desert, and that was probably my very first thing, and it was a lot of running in the sand and getting thrown, and there was like explosions. It was a very like sci-fi kind of a thing. So that was probably my first stunt gig.
That's an awesome first stunt
It was
gig.
A lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, shaking my hair at the end of the day was full of like everything was full of sand, but so.
Awesome. So what was like one of the craziest stunts you've ever done?
I was thinking about that not too long ago. I don't know off the top of my head, because right when you do some of these things, you're like, it's just another one in the books, or it's another thing that I was like, that's a lot of fun. So I mean, I've been on top of trains before, and more for safety than anything. Probably one of the last things I did in May was like driving a couple of different Jeeps, like precision driving in the desert, like off-roading, trying to hit marks and all that kind of stuff, and climbing tops of mountains and things like that just for a shot is always a lot of fun. Anything that's unique that I would never have found myself doing is probably one where I'm like, I would never get the chance to do this otherwise, so I always enjoy that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And obviously safety is like a huge
It's
deal.
the number one thing.
How did you stay safe throughout your career, I guess?
It's a matter of you probably want to think about what goes into a stunt first. And the biggest lesson that I had to learn when I was younger, when I was just starting out, was speaking up for myself. Because you're in an ideal world, your coordinator, your stunt coordinator will speak up for you or will talk to you about these things. But when I was the younger and I was involved in some things, it was I got injured because I didn't speak up and it's a minor injury, but it still kind of nags me sometimes today. It's a pinched nerve in my back, which comes and goes, so I'm pretty fine. But it's one of those things where that was a very big learning lesson for me at the time, which is like always, walk through the stunt beforehand, walk through with everybody, make sure everybody knows what's going on. And then again, if I don't feel right, like you have to speak up for yourself because, you always hope that somebody else will, but at the end of the day, right before you're supposed to do it, if you don't feel comfortable and if you don't feel safe, you need to kind of like say, hey, I'm not going to do this. And don't be afraid to.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what would you say you enjoy most about stunt doubling?
I love, when it comes to coordinating or doubling, I love being creative because again, doing fight choreography and coming up with that, it's almost as creative as any other department because usually I'll get the script really early on from a director who's a friend or somebody that I work with or somebody who's got my name from somebody else. And my process is kind of similar to everything else, is lining the script for like stunt beats or fight beats and then figuring out, okay, well, what's the safest way to do this? And a lot of times the most fun thing for me, especially when I'm doing a fight, is it'll just say in the script, they fight. And so it's kind of up to me and I'll just go and talk to the director and be like, what are you like looking for? What are the main things, if you could see one thing in this scene, what would you like to see? And then reading the rest of the script, figuring out kind of what is the story, like what's the storytelling, and then figuring out how to make story beats happen with action beats.
Right.
And that's a huge part of it. And then going from there is kind of like what I do. And that's literally my favorite part is, I look at a blank screen that says they fight, and then I watch it at the end of it. No matter how it came out, if I thought it should have been shot a different way, just all the work that went into making this scene and people who may or may not have the background in it and being successful on screen doing it is my favorite part.
Yeah, so you get to like direct it yourself
in a sense, in a sense, because again, I'll never sign off, or like nothing will get signed off without the director's approval, but it's always something where I get to come up with all of these ideas and say, which do you like? How do we make this better? What is working for you in a story sense and what's not working for you in a story sense? And then we'll kind of workshop it from there. And when it's all done, then that's when I'm proud of it. So,
right.
Yeah.
And you said you've like guest speaked at like UT or some colleges.
Well, a lot of places actually. That kind of all started again in like around 2012, because I was fortunate enough to know people, and now again going back to networking, some of those people have gone on to teach all over Austin and the country and high schools, middle schools, colleges, universities, and so probably for the last maybe since about 2013 or so, I've been teaching as a guest lecturer at UT every semester, and so it's like a little bit of a lab. Like one day I'll go and just show clips and talk about cinematography and lighting and casting and pre-production and all these things and why they're so important if you're going to do action, or even if it's like dancing or choreography, anything that is physical, and you put those all together, and then the next day we'll actually do it in class, in a lab. So I'll have everybody get up who wants to participate, and we'll just go through it, and we'll create a fight scene from scratch. And then they'll be able to, it'll take probably like 3 hours, and we don't even film it. They'll get a feeling of it, and they'll run through it. And I've always been told by my friends that ask me to come and teach that it's usually the student's favorite part of the semester, because it's something different. I mean, I don't know if you can through your classes, but getting to get up and actually get physical is something that's not really, the norm. And so it's a lot of fun to do it. And so I've been fortunate enough to do that on multiple levels and give speeches at conferences and stuff like that, academic conferences, since 2013 or so. So I really enjoy teaching. It's a lot of fun for me to just kind of go out and talk to people and kind of see those interests be piqued, because it interests me. And now it's kind of a weird thing. One of my first days at Rooster Teeth, somebody who is doing really well up over there on their talent side was like, you taught me, and it would end up being she was in the very first class that I taught in 2012. And so I'm starting to run into people around town who remember me specifically because I taught a class when they were in school. So that's
cool.
It's cool, but I'm also like, oh, I'm getting older here. So
right.
Yeah.
So you visit UT kind of a lot. And
I did. Yeah, I got a master's in 2017 also from there,
awesome.
in the film department also.
Congrats.
So, yeah, thanks. But yeah, so I've probably since 2002 there probably hasn't been a year that I didn't have some business on campus for a while. Yeah.
So since you've been there a lot, have you gotten to meet Matthew McConaughey? Or?
So funny story. No, I have not. But I have like a couple of weird 6 degrees of separation with him.
Oh, nice.
So the person who's teaching that class over there with him, because he teaches it with a longstanding UT alum, or UT professor, I should say. He taught me a couple of classes when I was there.
Oh wow!
And then also even in a weirder sense, my dad went to high school with his brother, and I've met his brother a couple of times, and they graduated in 1972. Because Matthew was born in a small town called Uvalde, and that's where my parents are from. And my dad, whenever we're there, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's where Matt where they grew up," because he was friends with his brother, and they played on Little League together, and with his brother, and he was like, Matt was always running around. He was the little brother that was kind of dunked on by his older brother. But so I've met his brother a couple of times, and my dad always like, "Oh yeah, that's where because apparently his dad, Matthew McConaughey's dad, was the Little League coach for my dad and his brother. So he's like, that's where we used to play. And behind his hometown or his home is the field where they would practice Little League. And so I've never quite met him yet, but I have this weird kind of like
connection.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. So what would be your favorite film? This is a little bit random, but what would you say?
If we're talking just in general, or like stunt fighting, or what?
What, like if it was an action movie, what would be your favorite?
Well, in the last couple of years, Mission Impossible last year really blew me away because that's fantastic. Mad Max, Fury Road was really great. This year has been some really fantastic movies. Like I said, I got into film as a film student versus like a stunt person, so I love all kinds of films. So I'm really into just anything great. And then of course, I have a special appreciation for watching movies that do martial arts and fighting and stunts and do it all really well. And just kind of, I wrote it. My thesis was actually on the differences between stunt industries in the U.S. versus Indonesia, Thailand, where they hit each other and stuff like that. So I always have an appreciation for seeing physical, people doing things very, very real. Because the friends that I work with and myself, we always feel a little bit hampered by working in the U.S. because there are a lot of safety things involved and a lot of things that hold you back a little. And so it's always cool to just see things where they're not holding back. Even though that raises a whole mixed bag of issues with safety, it's always fun to watch those things. So,
yeah. And would you say that you would look up to Tom Cruise's acting style?
I think he's
he does it all, right?
I think he is. Let's keep it he as a performer, he impresses me every single time he's on screen.
Yeah, for sure.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
Awesome. So, are there any celebrities you've worked with?
Yeah, working in being at UT for a while and working, I have gotten to meet or see or have and especially now. Rooster Teeth is now owned by Warner Brothers, so there's a lot of weird synergy going on. So, through my years of being in Austin, working in film, Francis Ford Coppola, Kamal Nanjiani not too long ago, Dave Bautista, Dennis Quaid, there's a lot of people that I've gotten to meet or talk to, or at least just kind of be in the room while they were doing their thing.
Oh, cool.
And vice versa through UT and then the other places that I've worked at since then.
Did you see David Bautista's new movie?
So we actually, like I said, some weird synergy thing. We held a screening of it at the annual Rooster Teeth RTX conference this year. Okay. So he wasn't there. Kumail Nanjiani. I haven't seen it yet because I was supposed to go and I wasn't able to make it because it was a big weekend at the conference. But we had a screening of it and he was at our studio with Kumail Nanjiani talking about it for a little bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what kind of to kind of finish it off, what kind of advice would you offer to aspiring stunt doubles or aspiring filmmakers of any sort?
Yeah, no, I would say that listen, when you're getting ready to do some of this stuff, choreography and stunts and all that kind of stuff, it's all under the umbrella of filmmaking, and you want to take as many lessons as you can in any place that you can. And I remember a long time ago somebody said to me, who was a professor, said, just make whatever you're doing, make it funny because people are probably going to laugh at it anyway.
Right.
And that's stuck with me for a really long time. It's kind of the wrong way to approach these things because, as students, you're just trying to learn and to grow, and there's no reason you can't try anything a little more ambitious. You just got to be safe with it. So take all the lessons you can and be safe, and kind of try everything that you want to try. Just figure out how to do it the right way and the safe way. And again, always just speak up for yourself if you don't feel that something's safe or done the right way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, man. It's been awesome, and it was a pleasure to have you. Could we do one more stunt before we?
Yeah.
finish off. We'll move the chairs over.
Thank you so much.
All right. So what, do you have like a hand kind of fighting style?
Sure, yeah. Okay,
Let me get serious real quick here.
Do you want to do something, or you want me to do something to show? What would you prefer?
You could, you fight me, I'll take it. I'll take a punch or something.
Okay, so I'm not gonna quite punch, but I'll,
all right.
We'll go through a little something. So I want you to, like say you're gonna throw a jab in my face there.
Okay.
I'm gonna go here. Let's like make it a little more right there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go there. Okay, and I'm gonna
All right.
hit your arm down, and I would love for you to, as I'm gonna punch you, block my hand there.
Okay.
So like kind of like that. Okay.
All right.
So we'll do it one more time. All right. So we'll
I'll do
go. Well, wait for me. Wait for me to go.
Okay,
Yeah, okay. So go ahead. Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome, man. If you guys want to learn more about Hector Gonzalez, you can follow him on Instagram. Y'all have a good night. Stay tuned for next week's episode on Cineworks Late Night.